Yes, cups did not fit me, and they didn't really make them for 8-year-olds.
That's a lot of information.
It's way too much.
Winners never quit, and quitters never win.
Quitters win all the time. Let us show you how on Quit Happens.
Hey guys, Lynn Marie here. Before we get started, just want to let you know where you can find out more about strategic quitting. You can go to my website, quittingbydesign.com, or you can find me on Facebook or Instagram at quittingbydesign. And if you really like this episode and you think other people would like to hear more about strategic quitting, you can help other people find my little podcast by putting a review or giving it some stars on iTunes or Stitcher or wherever you listen to podcasts. I would greatly appreciate it. Now, without further ado. Hey everyone, Lynn Marie here. Thank you so much for joining us for the next episode of Quit Happens. Today we have on the show Jordan Reich. He is the founding attorney of his own law firm, and I met Jordan at November Project. Now, before we get started, Jordan, I'll let you tell a little bit about what November Project is.
November Project is sort of like a free workout thing. It's sort of like a social club, and God, it really sounds like I'm doing a plug for it right now. I swear I'm not, but it's been a great...
This podcast brought to you by November Project.
Yeah, exactly. But it's been a great sort of way to meet people, get in shape, and sort of get out there in your own city, the November Project across the country. So it's worked out for me. So I've been really excited, and I got to meet you, which was really interesting and a fun event that I had at November Project.
I'm wondering how you're going to characterize that.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's been unique. And so, that was fun. And you told me about what you did with the podcast here. And at first, I believe you came up to me and you said, I do a podcast about quitting. And in my head, I'm thinking, well, that's really neat. That's fun. I'll probably listen to that. And I think I came up to you like the next week or maybe 2 weeks after that. And I said, I think I actually have a quit.
Yes, that is exactly what happened.
Yeah, and that's the way I remember it. And I said, I said to you, I don't know if it actually counts because, for quitting, a lot of people think, oh, it has to be a job.
Right.
And I have to go from one job to another or make a career change, that sort of thing. And mine is not quite that kind of quit, but it is definitely a quit. It's the mindset. That's the way you described it to me.
Well, yeah, partially, I obviously know about Jordan's quit, though not in detail that he's going to give us, but it's partially a mindset quit and partially like a lifestyle quit or kind of a pre-quit. Definitely.
Yeah, and the lifestyle thing is pretty important because that's actually, kind of why I came back into November Project was because of the big lifestyle change that I had. And I went from, if the title of the podcast hasn't told you already, I went from being very heavily into sports to being heavily not into sports. And but I do have some free time, which is why I got to go back and join November Project. So
yes,
it's very exciting.
Well, I'm very glad to have met you. You are likewise interesting and unique. And
aren't we all?
So if you could tell the listeners, like you said, you had a lifestyle change, sports related. Can you take us back to when you started playing sports?
Sure. So my sport of choice here, I guess, was
it your choice? Was it your choice?
No, it was not actually. But people say it's a drink of choice or whatever.
Right.
It is. So it was baseball. And as a kid, obviously, everyone's parents puts them into soccer, and then you eat the orange slices, or you go into basketball, or you do whatever you have to do. You remember the orange slices?
My parents put me in no sports.
Oh my! Okay, so
they knew better.
My parents are such introverts that we would go to soccer, and I was only excited about it because the orange slices, because I didn't get orange slices at home because we just did not. There was no celebration.
Oh wow!
It was like you go out and you do your job, and then you come back home. Yeah, it was something. So anyway, I did all the sports. I did basketball and baseball and tennis and no football. I was not allowed to play football because it was violent. Yes, It's too rough, which I am very thankful for now. Right. But my best sport became baseball. It wasn't initially baseball. So I started as a kid. And, they put you in there, and at first you hit off the tee, and then you do the pitching machine, and then the kids pitch. And that's where it got really interesting because I think they were probably about 10 years old, maybe 8 years old, who knows what age they are. But these are little kids throwing a hard ball at you. And, I'm a big guy, but you don't see yourself as being big. You see yourself as, I'm just a person. So, I get in there and I get in the batter's box and I was really nervous because these kids, every other kid would get hit with the ball and I never wanted to get hit. Right. So my parents put me in the sport, go into the sport, go stand in the batter's box. This kid's going to chuck a ball at you and you have to try and hit it. So I was sitting in the back of the batter's box and I would scoot to the very back corner, just don't hit me. That's all I was thinking. Don't hit me. Just throw the ball over the plate. I'll swing as often as I have to. Just get me out of here. And this became a huge problem. My mom would say, hey, I'll give you $5 every time you swing. And so, so as a kid, you're sitting there, okay, I'm going to make sure the ball doesn't hit me. And if it's not going to hit me, then I'll swing. And so
Did it count if the catcher had already caught it by the time you swung?
I was pretty good at hiding it. It probably wouldn't have. My mom's pretty smart.
Gotcha.
And it probably wouldn't have. So if I would have, if you would have heard the pop of the catcher's mitt and then my swing would have gone.
No dollars.
Then no money. And I needed that money because my parents were very stingy with me. So this was like life or death to a 12-year-old. Was that I needed to get that money. So I went through, I would say kid pitch probably started at about 8 years old. And it probably went until maybe 14. So this is a good, 5 or 6 years, whatever it is. Same thing over and over and over again. And I would play third base and I would play outfield. In the outfield, I picked dandelions. And at third base, I would just make sure I didn't get hit in the private area so that I didn't have to be numb for a little bit and pretend that nothing had happened. It's a real thing, trust me.
It's a thing.
Yes, cups did not fit me, and they didn't really make them for 8-year-olds.
That's a lot of information.
It's way too much. But just needless to say, it only took one time for me to realize I don't want to play third base anymore. So I would do that in the field, and then I'd go in and hit, and that was my hitting strategy was, back up to the corner, make sure I didn't get hit, and then swing bat. So I did that for a number of years. And then I went to, this was my last tryouts before high school. So this was about 8th grade. And one of the really famous, quote, coaches, I say that in quotes because, it's Little League, how famous can you be? But
and because everybody on the podcast can see your quotes.
Exactly. So I had to explain it. So the coach comes up and he goes up to my mom or my dad, whoever's there. I think it was my dad actually at this point. And the coach says, has he ever pitched before? And my dad says no, but, he's got a strong arm. The guy said, yeah, I think he does have a strong arm. So, it was tryouts, so all the kids had pitched already. And so the coach, brings me in there, and all the other coaches are sitting there watching. And I get in the bullpen, that for those of you who don't know, that's where a pitcher goes and practices. And I wind up and I throw to the pitcher. And you see the face on all of the coaches, including the one who brought me over there, just go into shock. Some of them had a giant smile. Some of them, looked like their jaws just opened up. I mean, I could launch the ball. And, everyone knew I had a strong arm, but when you really get in there and wind up and throw as hard as you can, it's a different story. It goes a lot faster. So that was really the beginning stages of how I found out that, hey, I can actually pitch or I can throw the ball. So the coach recruited me, and that's what I did for that team. And that was sort of the learning phase, going from, sitting in the outfield picking dandelions to throwing a ball past a kid as hard as I can. It was a lot more exciting, but it was different. And so there was a lot to learn. There was mechanics and there was mindset and there's all this stuff. But I stuck with it, and I went through high school, got much better, learned a lot more about it. And I'd say by about my sophomore or junior year, I got really into the groove of, pitching. I knew I was going to pitch. I became the closer. I got a lot more confidence. But there was always something missing. I'd sit through the whole game as the closer, and I was never really excited. It was more of like, yes, I'm good at this, but I always had that fear, that anxiety, that mental state where it's like, I'm doing it because I'm good, but I'd rather be doing something else. You know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And I think a lot of people get that. They'll get into something because they're talented at it. And there are a number of other things that I'm talented and other people are talented at that they don't necessarily like.
Yeah.
And this was one of them. So I would sit through the games and then I'd go in at the end and, usually it went well, but I hated that feeling leading up to it. And sometimes I hated the feeling of being on the mound, which was, oh my God, I have to do this. Everyone's looking at me. And when it gets into your head, it really gets into your head and you can't shut it off.
Yeah.
And things go from bad to ugly really quickly. But they can be great. If you're doing really well, it can be good. And it's a good feeling, satisfying feeling. So I got a lot of confidence. I remember our championship game in high school. I actually didn't mention this to you. You know, I mentioned a few things to you, but this is something that I totally forgot, which was we were at our championship game. This was the very last game of the season. And our starting pitcher goes out, and he just messes up. He gives up 7 runs in the first inning, which if you've watched baseball, which a lot of people have, 7's a good number.
It's a good number to have on your side.
Yes, it's not a good number to be going up against.
Right.
So I go up to the coach. Actually, I didn't go up to the coach. I started warming up in the middle of the first inning. This is after our pitcher threw and gave up 7 runs. I warmed up, got ready, and I went up to the kid. I think his name was Patrick. I'm probably wrong because this was, however, 17 years ago or 20 years ago. And maybe even more. I don't even know anymore. And I went up to him and said, I'm going to put myself in. I'm going to close this game out. And you're
going to close starting in the first inning?
I'm going to close starting in the second inning.
Also, if you don't know baseball, that's kind of hilarious.
Yes. And the funny thing is I was non-confrontational in high school. And I still am to a certain extent, but I can now, assert myself if I need to. But I went up to him, and it was not really a question. It was, I'm going to put myself in.
Wow.
And I threw a no-hitter shutout for the rest of the game, kept the team to 7 runs, and our team won in the bottom of the 9th off a home run, 8-7. And that was one of the best memories I had because that was not like me.
Really?
Just to go out there and
Were you enjoying yourself at least that day? Or were you still like, I hate doing this, but I'd rather win and hate it than lose and hate it more?
You know what? I enjoyed it that day, and for some reason, just that day, like the mental thing clicked where I'm just like, I'm going to do this. And I was hitting every spot I had to hit, and, velocity was up. Everything was clicking that day. That was fun. That was not normal.
Gotcha.
Normally, It was like hit or miss. It was like, I'll hit 7 batters and strike 7 out, or, whatever was going on. And I hated hitting people. That was terrible, but... Anyways, that was my high school experience, and so I got a little bit of attention. I grew up in San Diego, and I got a number of scholarships from local schools, some from non-locals. I think UCLA gave me one. I think, ASU. I know USD, that was one of the top ones, and I was trying to get one to Point Loma, which is a very local school if you're from San Diego. And so,
tell people why you wanted to go to Point Loma.
That's a great question, and I told you this, yes. And there's a reason you're asking this. So the reason I wanted to go to Point Loma was because of the field. I actually visited there. I had a friend who went there, and I said, I want to go check out the baseball field. So I went down there. It's a beautiful field. All colleges have grass in fields, grass out fields. Everything's manicured. But the difference with this one is that it is 15 feet from the water, and when you're standing on the mound, you can look over your right shoulder, and you can see the ocean. Like right there.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just perfect. And not liking baseball, I said, well, if I'm going to do it, that's where I'm going to do it.
Nice, yeah.
So in high school, this was before I graduated, I was working with a trainer in North County, San Diego. And he kind of worked with me through high school. High school, obviously, you train a little bit, but given where I was at and what my parents wanted, they wanted me with a trainer with hitting and everything. So worked with a trainer. He was great. He did the film, he did mechanics, he did everything. And one day he got me out, he got the camera out, and he said, okay, pitch, I'm going to get the gun, I'm going to clock you. So he did, and I clocked everywhere from about 81 to 91, which is, for a normal person, that sounds great. But in reality, in college baseball, everybody's up there. So the speed wasn't insane. But what was special about me is I had what my father called a live arm, and some people call it a tail. But when I throw the ball, it moves. And you don't know where it's moving. I don't know where it's moving. So if I don't know, you don't know.
Right.
Nor does the batter know. No one knows where it's going. It's just going to fly around. So I would throw the ball, and it just, left and right and up and down, wherever it's going. So because of that, which is rare, he said, I'm going to call somebody. I know somebody. And so he made a phone call. Of course, this is so long ago, I don't remember names or anything. I'm sure if you gave me, an hour or so, I could go back in the records and get some. But he called a guy from the Marlins from Florida, and he said, I've got this guy, he's in the 80s to low 90s with a big tail and a good curve. I had a good curve ball, which is a knuckle curve, another rare pitch. So I threw these rare pitches. So he described him to me, he said, 6'4", about 200 pounds, really good movement, really good velocity. The guy said, okay, I'm going to be out in San Diego in, let's say 60 days it was. And so he flew out. And so I went back up to the training facility. I met with the guy. I don't know. We can call him John. I don't actually know his name. Marlon John.
Yes.
And he came out, and what he did with me was sort of unique. It wasn't the normal, throw the ball, I'm going to catch it, or do this, do the gun. It was more of training drills, which when you got to the professionals, it's far more technical than it is in any sort of high school. And college is a little more technical too, but it was hit this spot, curve the ball here, go around this, all these things that you don't really think about that when you get up to the pros, that's what they need because everybody throws hard and everybody's got movement on their pitch. And so you really need someone who's like, okay, this guy has an injured right shoulder. He's going to be slow around the inside. Or, this guy's really short. He's going to be slow up and out or whatever the situation is. They need those guys because that's how, if you ever watch baseball, it's so technical. This is what they hit. So he did that. We went through the training. He was impressed. And he came out. I think we did another 2 or 3 times. We did other types of trainings. We did fielding and hitting. He wasn't really too impressed with that, or too interested, I should say.
Was he really impressed with how far away you stood from the plate and how you had to be paid $5 every time to swing?
That actually ended sometime in high school. The $5 did end, although it would have been nice for lunch money, especially in high school. No, at a certain point, I think my mom actually realized what I was doing. And she said, you just need to hit the ball.
We're cutting you off.
Yeah, we're cutting you off. At $100, you've done enough missing. That Actually, what's funny is my first at-bat in high school, I hit a monster home run, and then I struck out every single time after that for the entire year.
Way to set the bar.
Yes.
And never get back to it.
And as I was rounding first on that home run, my coach gives me a high five and said, this is going to be a great year.
You're like, jinx.
Yeah, and I'm like, little do you know. No. So when I was training with Marlon John or whatever his name was, it was like an hour or two of that because pitchers, they don't hit, they don't need to know anything. They just need to throw the ball. So it was, more technical stuff and everything. And so by the end of it, he was interested. It was a good workout. I practiced really well. That's the thing. So a lot of the problem for me is what's in the head. It's the mental aspect of don't hit the batter, hit the spot, do this, do that. Whereas when I'm practicing, it's just throw hard right there. I'm like, okay, very single-minded. I can do that stuff, which I do. So I practiced well, and he was very interested. And he said, okay, well, we'd like to bring you out. And I thought, wow, I'm 18. This is amazing. Someone from this level is actually interested. Now, it wasn't like, hey, we're drafting you.
Yeah.
Or anything like that. But it was, there's some level of interest.
Right.
Yeah. That's exciting. And so, I met with the guy and I thought that was really neat. And my dad was there because he was always the one who drove me. And so I went back to my dad and on the way home, we're talking and he says, this is a commitment. And I thought to myself, I'm 18 at this point or 19 or however old I was. I was like, okay, yeah, whatever. I'm committed.
Committed to the pros.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I love, I'll play baseball, whatever. It's fine. You make money. And he said, no, this is something that you need to learn about. And he said, there's 700 or 800 professional baseball players. How many can you name? And I could probably name 20 if I was lucky. And he said, yeah, there's probably, 70 or 80 that of that are household names that you've heard of. Those people make money. Those people make a lot of money. The problem is that you know who they are. And if you were into baseball or you're living in the city where they played, everyone there knows who they are. And those people can't go to the store. And those people are surrounded by a lot of, negativity, positivity, money, drugs, women, media, you name it, they've got to deal. It's like politics.
Yeah.
And that's less than 10% of the pros. The rest of the people are not there. In fact, a big majority of them don't make very much. The people that sit on the bench, a lot of them make the league minimums based on their bracket. They're sort of like the rookie league minimum, the veteran league minimum, that sort of thing. And he explained to me, he said, a lot of the people, they make that amount of money and they'll do it for 4 years and then they'll get cut. And then they've gone through the training, whatever that takes, and they've, got injured, they made a little bit of money, whatever's happened, and they come out and they've got to restart their life. And they don't make a ton. A lot of people think, oh, they're all millionaires. They're not all millionaires. A lot of the people, the league minimum, I think now is like $475,000, which, if I talked to a normal person and said, hey, I'm making $475,000, they'd, look at me like I was crazy if I didn't think that was a ton of money. Yeah. It is. It's a lot of money. It's a ton of money, actually. But when you take off everything, the taxes, the agent fees, if you don't have injuries contracted for, if you don't have travel contracted for, whatever it is, you end up with, a lot of money, but not a ton of money.
Mm-hmm.
You can't retire. It's a lot. But you still need a career. You can't live in San Diego for the rest of your life on $600,000
Right.
or $800,000. It's a ton. It'll get you a long way. But you are not raising a family on that. And so he said, you're going to give up a lot of your life to go after this. And you've got to recognize where you were. And I knew that I was never going to be very good. That was part of it. I knew I was never going to be, the top guy. Because I didn't throw 100. I didn't have 18 inches on my curveball. I wasn't like that. I knew if I made it that I was going to be at the bottom.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and it wasn't going to be very good. That was my first consideration.
Okay.
Because you're always sort of thinking about that. Well, my main consideration was I'm going to be playing baseball every day for the next 5 to 8 years. Do I want to have anxiety? Think about the anxiety I had in high school
Right.
with 13 people watching.
Right.
Do I want to have anxiety with 13,000 or 50,000 or whatever it is watching, plus everyone watching on TV?
Yep.
The answer was no way. Like, not even close. Thinking about that sort of made me nervous. You know? And the training, the running, and all the stuff. I mean, I was 6 to 8 hours a day. Treadmill, basketball, baseball, weights. I mean, the regimen is insane. And when you get to college and when you get to the pros, it gets even more intense.
Yeah.
And then they monitor your diet too.
Oh, geez.
I was not interested in. I was eating cookies and stuff, which I like, and pizza.
Mm.
It was all delicious. Those are things you don't get.
Wow.
When they sneak in.
Yeah.
And the other thing is everyone's, doing like steroids
Mm-hmm.
or, whatever else they can to enhance, which I was not having. So I would say I sat on it for up to a week. And I thought about the money. And I thought about my feelings. And at the end of it, I think I was smart. For a 19-year-old or 18-year-old, however old I was, to be able to see that this is not my career and this is not making me happy. And in order to change it, I need to change now. I was pretty impressed with myself.
I think that's an impressive thought process, especially for somebody your age with the glamour of the pros on the other side. To be able to turn that down, like who doesn't grow up at some point, if they actually liked baseball, wanting to be insert name of famous baseball player here. Right.
And something I'll add to that is, I had a friend growing up and his family was what I would consider pretty poor. They didn't have anything. And I considered my family pretty wealthy. We weren't as wealthy as I thought because I was a kid. But, we didn't struggle with money. And so I sort of attribute my ability to make that distinction from my family, having money and having sort of the ability to say yes to some things and no to some things when it comes to career, when it comes to money. And I was able to see that. Whereas my friend who was growing up, if anyone came across and said, hey, we're going to give you $200,000 to play basketball or whatever he loves, he'd be gone in a heartbeat. He wouldn't even think about it.
Yeah.
Because it's all about that money.
Right.
And so I was lucky at a young age where I didn't have to consider only the finances.
People come at quiz from different starting points, and it's great to acknowledge that because somebody who's trying to raise 4 kids on their own as a single parent is in a different place for quitting than, somebody in my situation, single, no dependents, etc.
Oh, yeah.
So, to realize that had an influence on your decision and that you were super fortunate that your parents not only didn't have to struggle for money so that put you in the right mindset, but that your dad was like, I guess it kind of bold enough to take somebody whose dream could have, had you really dreamed of the pros and to give you like a reality check.
Yes, very fortunate because I know a lot of people didn't get the same treatment I did. In fact, a very close friend of mine did not get the same treatment and wasted about 8 years of his life just trying to get into the minors.
Oh,
yeah. And because of that dream, didn't go to college, went to junior college. Didn't make it in junior college, tried to, at least make it to Travis and the pros, didn't make it to the pros. And that's 8 years gone. And in the past 8 years, look at what I've done, which we haven't talked about yet. You and I have talked about it privately, but we'll get there. But if I were to give up 8 years of my life, it would have pushed everything out. I mean, my life would be completely changed.
Completely different.
Yeah.
Let's back up just a second.
Sure.
So I promised Jordan I would interrupt him more in this story, and I've done a terrible job of it because you're a great storyteller, and I'm just like, oh, tell me more.
Oh, you're just being nice.
No. Well, things I was going to ask you, I'm like, oh, there you mentioned it. So I will back up to this. I appreciate you mentioning the anxiety because anxiety is one of the big red flags for strategic quitting. When I say strategic quitting starts with knowing when there's something you need to quit, and the way you know is when your intuition starts giving you these signals. And anxiety is a huge one because anxiety also has so many manifestations. It can manifest as insomnia or irritable bowel or reflux or any, heartburn, any of these things. So what was it like for you? Like how, as a kid I'll be honest, at 19, I couldn't recognize signs of anxiety. How were you able to recognize it?
That's a great question. So I have only recently come to be able to categorize my anxiety and to be able to act on it. Looking back on it now, I can easily say, oh, that was anxiety and here's why. And I'll tell you why. So when I was a kid, the anxiety was so easy to recognize, not as a kid, but as an adult, I can look back. But because I had a hesitation, I didn't want to do things. I sort of had to either force myself to do something, or I would do something because, it was my responsibility or because someone else wanted me to do it. And what I realized today is that to do something or to be passionate about something or to do something without anxiety is to do something that you want to. When you wake up in the morning and you have some level of excitement or interest or something that motivates you to get there. Whereas, when I knew it was my day to pitch and I was younger, I would fear it. I would dread it. A lot of people going to work. If you have a bad boss, you dread going to work. You are afraid to go to work. You think you're going to get fired all the time. Same thing. I thought I was going to hit everybody. I thought I was going to break someone's leg by throwing it at, I thought of the worst things you could think of before the game, and it drove me nuts. And as a kid, you're like, oh, this is normal. Everyone's going through it.
Right.
This is just what you do. And you show up, you throw the ball. If you're lucky, it goes over the plate. If you're not, you sit down, you get ice cream afterwards. It's all okay tomorrow.
Right.
But yes, I absolutely recognize the anxiety nowadays. And for me, this was a recent sort of revelation, to my sort of anxiety level and in my sort of thinking is that if I don't want to do something, I'm just going to not do it because your life can go by so quick when you're doing things that you don't want to do. And you could have gone through that entire time period doing something you did want to do.
Right.
Very easily. All you had to do is just not do what you didn't want to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Opportunity cost.
Exactly.
That's it.
It's like the story I tell about my friend who wasted that time.
Yeah, you can only do so many things with your one life.
Exactly.
Do something you like.
And people who know me know that I do a lot of different things during the day. And that would have been something that took up a lot of time that I couldn't have been doing. And I literally wouldn't be where I am today.
Yeah, absolutely. I always tell people, I like how you said, I thought everybody felt this way. And it didn't take until your adult years for you to be able to categorize it. I recently wrote an article called I'm a Doctor and I Didn't Know I Had Anxiety because same thing for years. I would have these symptoms that I just kind of assumed everybody else felt. Mm-hmm. And it got to the point where I was prescribing myself medication to lower my heart rate when I would see patients because seeing patients made my heart rate skyrocket.
There it is. It's the same thing.
I didn't think like, oh, maybe I shouldn't be seeing patients. Maybe seeing patients makes me anxious. I was just like, let's take a beta blocker. Oh
my God. Funny you should mention that. That actually was part of my career for the past 7 years.
Oh, that's right.
Yes.
I never asked you that.
But yes, it's that feeling that you get where, there's some hesitation. And that's what I would say to people. If there's any hesitation as to what you're doing, and you want to make the change or you think you should make the change, at least look into it.
What a billboard for strategic quitting.
Yes.
Okay, so when you finally decided to make the decision, you had told me privately, you did well in school. You had other options. It wasn't like going with a baseball scholarship was your only option.
Right. So I did pretty well academically. I was pretty darn strong. Now, I didn't care in school. I was one of those kids that would sleep and then somehow pass the test. Teachers would get upset with me. I wasn't amazing. I wasn't a 4.0 student because, as I told you, I have ADD.
Application. Yeah,
I have ADD. I was looking at the walls. I was concentrating on butterflies, Somehow I just figure it out on the test and magically get through. But I did well enough. And so I did, well enough. I put myself through college. I got an MBA. I got a JD, which is a law degree. And then I got an LLM, which is a master's in tax. And then I'm currently doing another master's degree at Harvard in biology. So I sort of have a giant background.
Let's step back real quickly to that conversation with your dad and the thought process. Was there anybody pushing you to go the opposite direction?
To go into baseball?
Yes.
Yes. And so this is very difficult, but I would say part of me. And the reason I say that is because I felt this expectation. I was really good at baseball. I mean, look, I got attention from a lot of different people. There's obviously something there. You know, my friends knew I was good. My family knew I was good. I felt societal pressure. I definitely did. To stay in, to go as far as you could. And all of that is internal, right? Society's pressure on you is all coming from you. And so that's why I say I am the one who was kind of pushing myself to do it. Even though I hated it. I didn't want to do it.
Well, it's notable that was from you and not other people telling you, like, you're going to waste this talent if you don't use it, that kind of thing. Exactly. I mean, good on your parents, family, friends, surrounding people that they didn't say that to you. Mm-hmm. But I do understand how there is that. One of the things I'd love to get out of Jordan's story for everybody listening is the fact that just because you're great at something and people think you should be doing that because you're great at it, it's not that you're going to waste that talent. It's just you probably have a plethora of other talents.
Exactly.
Or maybe something else that you like doing. You're not as good at, mm-hmm. but you can work at it.
Exactly. Or maybe you'll find something you are good at.
Yeah.
You know, it just so happened. Look, I was good at baseball. I'm even better at some other things. And I may have missed that.
Yeah.
You know, I've done a lot of consulting, business consulting for a lot of different industries. And I have a real knack for that. And I probably wouldn't have discovered that if I hadn't made that shift. You know, if I went till I was, in my late 30s, early 40s playing baseball, then I realized, hey, I got to have a career. I got to do something. It may not have come up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or it may have been passed over.
Were there any fears when you made that decision, when you were in the process of making the decision?
Yeah, so I did give it some time, which for an 18 or 19-year-old is pretty impressive to give it more than 30 seconds of thought, which is I'll play. Let's go to Carl's Jr.
Exactly. I was just gonna say, was there ice cream related? Because there's always food in this.
There's always food. Yeah. Yes. There was quite a lot of fear. What was I gonna? This had been my life for a long time. I started from T-ball, which I think T-ball is about 5 years old, up until 18, 19 years old. This had been what I did. I go to school. After school, I was doing sports. And to go from that to suddenly it's school and then it's whatever is way different. I mean, I was structured from the time I woke up until the time I went to bed. And that completely changed. And that was a little fearsome as, what was I going to do? And then it was even more fearful, actually, afterwards, trying to fill that void. That was a tough one.
Yeah. What should be pointed out that I'm not sure we covered, you didn't then skip the pros and go to college and play baseball. You went to college and didn't play baseball.
Exactly. Yeah.
You were done with baseball.
I went from high school to having all these scholarships and opportunities to play baseball to nothing.
Gotcha.
And going to college knowing nothing about what I wanted to do.
Right. Yeah. And this is one of the few, I like to point these out because most quits are reversible. Mm-hmm. Quitting your opportunity at the Marlins was probably not going to be too reversible.
No, that's when it's over.
Yeah.
Because those people know each other.
Yeah.
And they talk. And not to mention when you're about a year or two out from being in what I would call perfect shape to not being in perfect shape, it's nearly impossible to get back. I mean, you're training 6 to 8 hours a day. So, I was drenched in sweat almost half the day, every day of the week, 52 weeks a year. Yeah. There was no way to get back.
Gotcha. One last thing about that quit is, and tell me whether or not I'm right on this, had you built some of your identity around being a baseball player, which is probably what made it difficult afterward, because then, again, you're like, what do I do and who am I?
Yeah, it was more with my social circle. So, my friends and family and that sort of thing. I'd always talk, okay, I'm going to play baseball because that's just what I did. Even my best friend, if you called him up and asked him, he still probably has it. I autographed one for him as a kid. I said, here, just hang on to this. He was probably my biggest fan.
That's so cool.
But yeah, it was a lot to go from that, where that's what people expected, to, hey, everyone, it's not going to happen. I'm just not doing it because I don't want it. That's it. What
was it like when you went into college to kind of tell people what you were into? Had you already created a new, taken up some other hobbies, or?
No, it's funny. It's funny you should ask that. So when I went into college, I went in as a physics major because in high school, my physics teacher gave me an A for what I considered F-style work. So I thought, wow, I'm great at physics. So I said, I must be really good, right? So I went into physics. I show up the very first day where they, sort of get all the people in the same major together and you have lunch or whatever. And I looked around the room and I said, these are not my friends. I was a big, giant athlete, and these are, like physics majors, Big Bang Theory kind of guys.
I was going to say the Big Bang Theory.
I'm looking around the room like, as much as I'd love to hang out with these people, they're probably not going to want to socialize with me. So I immediately changed to business. Which, ironically, most of my friends now are very nerdy, and we play like Magic the Gathering.
I was gonna say, can I out you on your Magic the Gathering?
There's no filters here. Yeah,
I love it.
It's like video games and nerdy stuff, and that's actually the people I get along with the most, which is kind of fun. I actually don't get along with the jocks and the meatheads, like the fraternity guys and all that stuff. I just look like I do. So when I start talking, people kind of give me this weird look like, aren't you supposed to be one of those idiots over there?
That's awesome. So those probably were your people, but, you live and learn.
You live and learn. So I went through business, and it took me, I think, 4 or 5 years. I was sort of I was still in that phase where I slept through school, and, college was no different.
Yeah.
And then did the same thing through my MBA. I kind of slept through my JD, and, now I'm at the point where I'm in my career and I'm thinking to myself, I need to know some of this stuff. And, at a certain point through college, I kind of figure, okay, I need to learn this class. I need to learn stuff. And I developed those study habits. And that's where things really changed. And I decided, okay, I can be good at business. I can, succeed. I can do this. And I realized what it took. And I realized how much effort you had to put in and how detailed you have to be and how you have to get everything perfect. And it was a big change going from playing sports and sleeping through class to being successful in the professional world.
Is there anything else about your quit that I haven't asked you about?
Oh, that is a great question. I think you've been pretty thorough. I think that if I were to talk to the listeners one-on-one, I think the thing that I would say is that there are sort of phases. And the first phase is, whether or not I should quit. And recognizing, how to do that or what it is. I think that's important. And so for most people, what they do, especially, a lot of people are going to listen to this and they're thinking about work, right? That's the majority of people who want to quit something. They're working, they're not happy. And recognizing, should I quit? And the answer that I would give them is probably yes. And the reason I would say that is because you're looking at this, you're looking at your job or whatever you're doing, you're thinking, I'm not happy, this is horrible. And then the next thing that hits you is, but am I going to find something? Is something going to be better? Is this normal? Should I just put up with this? And the answer is it's really up to the individual, but there's always something better. There's always something else. There's so many things to do in this world where, if you identify as sports, there's other sports. If you identify in business, there's so many industries. Even now, we've talked, we sort of brushed over and I'm a practicing attorney. There's, 100 different areas of law you can practice. You don't like one, you do another. There's the prosecution, there's the defense, there's non-litigation. There's so many different things you can do in every industry that, yes, you will always find something. And you'll almost always do better because the natural sort of mentality and the process that you go through when you quit leads you to get to something better because you've developed these standards. You've gone through something that's been terrible. You've gone through something that you didn't like. And you're now going to get a fresh mind, a fresh outlook, look for something new, and you're going to avoid those things. And you're probably going to end up better than where you were.
I didn't pay Jordan to say any of that. But it's like straight verbatim from the book that you hadn't read yet. Yeah, almost nobody has. But if I gave workshops or you weren't there, whatever, I'm super impressed that you're just like, here, let me tell you about strategic quitting.
Yes, I'm going to lecture. I'm going to lecture you now. And so,
but no, it's beautiful. I always say I want people to come on here and give their take on strategic quitting because maybe somebody identifies with you more than they would do with me or one of my other podcast guests. And maybe you can phrase it in a way that will speak to somebody in a way that I couldn't phrase it. And it's just beautifully put. It's a strategic quit if you go to the next thing learning from the past quit, even if the only thing you learn is that you never want to do that thing again. Mm-hmm. That's it.
Yeah, and the money shouldn't be the relevant part. A lot of people will say, I'm going to make $8,000 less here. Your happiness is worth so much. I've gone through times where I've made good money, and I've gone through times where I've made no money. And honestly, the best time of my life is when I made nothing.
Wow.
Yeah. Although I'm having a lot of fun right
I
now.
was going to say, today is not bad,
No,
right?
today is not bad, but
well, on that note, thank you so much for joining us, Jordan, and sharing your story.
thank you, Lynn Marie. I appreciate it. This has obviously been incredible.
Well, I'm glad you had a good time. All right, for everyone else out there, until next time, happy quitting.